Welcome back to Weight and Metabolism. Today, we're going to talk about the commercial weight loss programs and what does the evidence say about them. Let me ask you something first. Have you ever lost weight on a diet or a plan, really lost it, and felt like you had finally cracked the code, and then months or maybe a year later, watched the weight come back and told yourself quietly that it was your fault, that you gave up, that you did not try hard enough, that you didn't have enough willpower, that you just couldn't stick with it? If all of that sounds familiar, I want you to hear something clearly before we go any further. You did not fail the program failed you. And today I'm going to show you exactly why, with the evidence and science to back it up. I'm Dr. Deepti Sharma, a physician, triple board certified in family medicine, obesity medicine, lifestyle medicine, and a certified menopause practitioner. And this podcast exists because I believe that everyone deserves an honest, evidence-based answers to the questions sometimes the doctors do not have time to answer in a clinical setting. Today, we are talking about commercial weight loss programs, the ones you have seen advertised, the ones you have tried or your friends have tried, and what the research actually tells us about whether they work or not. And first of all, why does this conversation matter? The commercial weight loss industry in the United States alone is worth over $70 billion. Let that number sit for a moment. $70 billion. And yes, yet we are not getting healthier. As a population, the rates of obesity continue to rise, the metabolic diseases continue to rise, heart disease continues to rise, cancers continue to rise, and millions of people cycle through program after program, losing weight and regaining it back, blaming themselves every single time. That cycle has a name. It is called weight cycling. And it is not a personal failure. It's a predictable physiological response to the way most commercial programs are designed. Here is the thing that most of these programs do not tell you. Our body is not a passive bystander in the weight loss process. When you restrict calories significantly, no matter what plan you use, which is the core of almost every commercial program, your body responds to it. It lowers your resting metabolic rate, it increases your hunger hormone like ghrelin, it decreases satiety hormones like leptin. We have talked about it extensively in my videos. And our body is doing exactly what it was designed to do, which is to protect you from starvation, to make you survive. The problem is that your body cannot tell the difference between a diet and a famine. So when the weight comes back, it is not because you lost your motivation, it is because your biology was working against you the entire time. And a program, no matter which one you use, does not address that biology. It is temporarily treating a number on a scale. Let's talk about the most popular program first, WeightWatchers. It is the most recognizable name in this industry. It has been rebranded, but it has been around since the 1960s. It is based on a point system. It's very affordable. It assigns values to food, encourages community accountability, and has evolved over the decades to incorporate more of a behavioral and wellness focus. But initially, it was all just points. What does the evidence say about that? WeightWatchers is actually one of the better studied commercial programs. And to be fair, it does have some legitimate research behind it. A study done in 2011 published in The Lancet compared WeightWatchers to standard primary care advice and found that participants in the Weight Watcher group lost significantly more weight at 12 months. And a 2019 independent study found meaningful short-term weight loss outcomes. But here is where we have to look more carefully. Most of the robust studies on Weight Watchers show meaningful results at 12 months, but what happens after that? That's where the data gets murkier. The long-term follow-up. Long-term follow-up studies, those looking at 2, 3, 5 years out, consistently show that most participants regain a significant portion of the weight they lost. And the studies that do show better long-term outcomes are often funded by WeightWatchers itself. which is a significant limitation we have to acknowledge. What Weight Watcher does reasonably well is behavior change and community support, which is great in any new change that you're trying to make. The group accountability, the model, has genuine value in psychology. For some people, that structure is exactly what they need, but it does not address the underlying metabolic and hormonal drivers of obesity. And for many patients, especially those with insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, or hormonal changes from menopause, a point system alone is simply not going to be enough. It is also a lot of work. I can never do that. Next, Noom. Noom is the newer, shinier version of the behavioral weight loss app, and it has been marketed brilliantly as the anti-diet diet. It leans heavily into psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy principles, habit formation, mindset shifts, and positions itself as a lifestyle change rather than a diet. Its color-coded food system, daily lessons feel modern and evidence-informed. And some of those psychological principles are genuinely sound. They are based on cognitive behavioral therapy and eating behavior. All of that has support from research. Addressing the emotional and psychological dimensions of eating is important, and I want to give credit where it's due. But Noom also has faced significant criticism. First, it's expensive, and also 2016 study published in Nature Scientific Reports, which was frequently cited in Noom's marketing, showed the weight loss results, but it was an observational study. It was self-reported data from Noom users with no control group. That is a significant flaw when it comes to methodology of research. An independent, rigorous clinical trial on Noom are limited. There have also been reports from users about the calorie targets that Noom recommends being extremely low, sometimes dangerously so, and about the app feeling more like a calorie restriction food dressed up in a psychological language than a true behavior change program. For people who already have a complicated relationship with food, that combination can be very harmful. Next program that I'm going to talk about is Jenny Craig and Nutrisystem. Jenny Craig and Nutrisystem operate on a very similar model. Pre-packaged, portion-controlled meals that take the decision-making out of the eating, and it's easy, it's in the fridge, you just have to grab and eat. And from a short-term outcomes perspective, they actually perform reasonably well in research. A 2015 systematic review and meta-analysis published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, one of the most comprehensive analyses of commercial programs ever conducted, found that Jenny Craig participants lost significantly more weight than control groups at 12 months. Nutrisystem showed similar short-term results. So why am I not recommending everyone to sign up? Because the research consistently shows that once people stop using the prepackaged meals, which is inevitable because no one can eat diet brand food forever, the weight returns. In all honesty, I've tried Jenny Craig and the food was not healthy. It was less calories and I lost weight, but it was not healthy. These programs create weight loss in a controlled artificial eating environment. They do not teach sustainable eating skills in the real world. They also do not address why someone eats the way they do. They do not account for the metabolic changes that happen during and after weight loss. And they're expensive, which creates difficulty with access and equity that we cannot ignore. Jenny Craig notably closed most of its physical locations and shifted to an online model and has faced significant business challenges. That is not irrelevant for context. When a program cannot sustain its own business model, it tells us something about long-term engagement. Next, I come to Optavia. Optavia deserves its own conversation because it operates differently from others. And I want to be very careful and fair here because this is a program that has a very passionate community around it. I have tons of patients who have used Optavia. Optavia is a meal replacement based program that involves eating 5 of their proprietary fuelings, the bars, the shakes, and other low-calorie packaged foods, plus 1 lean and green meal per day. The total caloric intake on the program is typically somewhere between 800 and 1200 calories per day. The participants are coached by health coaches who are often not licensed medical or nutrition professionals, but are themselves Optavia customers. There are a few things that concern me clinically about this model. First, very low calorie diet. Anything consistently under 1200 calories can accelerate muscle loss, particularly in the absence of adequate protein and resistance training. Losing muscle mass lowers your resting metabolic rate, which makes weight regain more likely when caloric restriction ends. Second, the coaching model creates a situation where financial incentives are intertwined with health advice because coaches earn income by recruiting new customers. That is a huge conflict of interest, in my opinion, that patients deserve to know about. Third, the extreme dietary restriction on Optavia does not teach sustainable eating. It just replaces eating with a product. How long can you keep doing that? I have seen patients come to me after Optavia with significant metabolic changes, nutritional deficiencies, and a profound sense of failure when the weight returns. They did not fail. The model was not designed for their long-term success. So, in the end, in conclusion, what does the research say? The big picture. In 2015, the Annals of Internal Medicine published the landmark systematic review I mentioned above. It analyzed the evidence on 12 commercial programs. Their conclusion was striking. Most programs produced modest weight loss compared to no intervention at all, and the difference between each individual program was small. Almost all programs showed significant weight regain in long-term follow-up, and the evidence base for most of these programs was described as limited in quality. A 2020 review in the British Medical Journal reached similar conclusions. Short-term results exist, but long-term results are disappointing, and the research quality is frequently poor or has conflict of interest. So here is what the evidence does support. Weight loss approaches that combine behavioral support, coaching, dietary changes, physical activity, and address the psychological dimensions of eating tend to produce better outcomes than those that focus on restriction alone. Approaches that are medically supervised and individualized, that take into account a person's hormones, metabolic rate, medical history, mental health, their lifestyle, tend to outperform one-size-fits-all programs. And for many people, particularly those with obesity as a chronic disease, lifestyle intervention alone is insufficient, and medical treatment, including pharmacotherapy, is appropriate and evidence-based. Lastly, before I go on to end the episode, I want to spend a moment here because that is the part that matters the most. The research on weight regain after the commercial programs is consistent and sobering. Studies show that majority of people who lose weight on any dietary intervention, any kind of dietary restriction, regain most of it within 3 to 5 years. And for many people, the regain is accompanied by a decrease in metabolic rate that makes subsequent weight loss even harder. This is not a flaw in the character, willpower. This is a physiology problem, as we have talked about before. Your body is going to bring you back with metabolic adaptation. And like I said, the resting energy expenditure decreases and muscle mass decreases as well. Another thing that I want to mention here, that there was a landmark study following the contestants from The Biggest Loser. They found that 6 years after the show, participants had metabolic rates that were hundreds of calories per day lower than expected. Their hunger hormones were still dysregulated. Their bodies were still fighting to return their previous weight. Most of them had gained the weight back. The commercial programs almost universally do not address, and The Biggest Loser did not address that either. They are designed to produce short-term weight loss, which they can do, but they do not address the chronic relapsing nature of obesity as a disease. So if you've tried WeightWatchers and lost 30 pounds and gained 35 back, your metabolism responded exactly as the research would predict, or our biology would predict. If you did Noom and felt like you were doing everything right until you weren't, your hunger hormones were working against you in ways that the app cannot predict or acknowledges. If you spent thousands of dollars on Optavia and felt like failure when the weight came back, and the program felt like that you failed the program, no, the program failed you. It's not your failure, but a program's failure. The model was the problem. So in the end, let's talk about what actually works and what to look for. Where does this leave us? I'm not here to leave you without a path forward, and I want to share the evidence-based tools that have shown to help in your weight loss journey. Number one, we have great medications for weight loss. Understanding your hormones, getting a thorough medical evaluation, your body composition, your metabolic rate, insulin sensitivity, and ruling out any other underlying conditions like hypothyroidism, adrenal disorders, Cushing's syndrome that affect your weight is helpful. Also ruling out behavioral problems and also depression, anxiety. So support in terms of behavior, managing your mental health, and then we can have sustainable weight loss. Nutritional guidance that focuses on what to eat rather than just how little to eat. The physical activity that prioritizes muscle preservation and muscle building and metabolic health. And then also addressing the medication part of it, which is a very important tool as well. It's not a shortcut, it is appropriate evidence-based care. If you want to learn more about this, please continue to follow. Thank you.